Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We can probably get started now to the main PowerPoint here. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Saima Shaik. I am a licensed professional counselor. Thank you for joining us tonight for Project Taqwa's Declassified School Survival Guide, a mental health survival guide to Zoom University.
And Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Imaan, and just to introduce myself, I am currently doing my master's in mental health counseling.
Okay, and we'd like to give a shout out to Project Taqwa and Elmer's Tamasay and Dipal Uma for creating this platform and coming together and collaborating to put this together for all of you, inshallah, and hopefully it'll be beneficial.
Great. And so before we get started, we just wanted to go over a couple of disclaimers. So we just wanted to remind everyone that the information that we're going to be sharing today, and inshallah, the discussions that we will be having are going to be coming from purely a mental health standpoint. So we do want to reiterate that it's not really coming from more of a religious standpoint on the topic, but again, as mental health professionals, we will be speaking more towards the mental health aspect. And if anybody wants some more information in regards to religious views or religious beliefs on the topic, then please inshallah reach out to us and we can connect you to someone who is more well-versed with this topic. And then second of all, please feel free to turn on your camera or turn on your mic or post any questions in the chat. We do hope to inshallah make this as much of a discussion and as collaborative as possible. So if you ever have any questions or any comments or anything like that, then please feel free to share. And then also, we just want to mention that you can feel free to also step out at any point if you just need a break from the content or just need to step away and rejoin the Zoom call. Please feel free to do so at any time, and we'll have somebody from the Project Taqwa team re-add you back in. And then finally, we just want to mention that the session is going to be recorded. So if you ever want to access this again or want to send this out to somebody else, then we will be able to do that, inshallah. Okay. All right, so just a quick view on what the agenda is going to look like today. First, we are just going to go through an introduction, just give some background information on this topic, speak a little to why we are all here today. And then we have some real life scenarios where we'll just give some examples on situations that maybe you might be facing or might know somebody else who might be facing during this time. And then finally, we'll go into some stress management techniques as well as some self-soothing strategies. So before we begin, we just wanted to speak to a little bit to, why we're all here today. So we do, of course, all of us, I'm assuming most of us are probably college students or maybe know somebody who is currently a college student during this time and probably somewhat kind of recognizes that it is a difficult time to be a college student in regards to being remote and doing school from home and having to just manage both your mental health, maybe your physical health, and just kind of getting used to this process of doing school from home during COVID. So we have put this together to, inshallah, discuss some of the struggles that we might be all facing or know people who are facing, as well as maybe some positives of being remote, and then kind of go into how can we tackle some of the struggles that we might be facing. What are some things that we can do for ourselves? What are some things that we can just be more self-aware of, or maybe even just keep in mind to help other people who might be struggling with their mental health during this time? So first of all, we wanted to bring up or pose a question to all of you actually is, what are some struggles of being remote? So feel free to, open your mic and speak to this, or maybe just send us a message in the chat. But if you guys are college students or know anybody who is in college currently, we'd love to kind of hear you guys and see what are some struggles that you guys might be facing during this time. So I'll leave it open for anybody, a minute or two, see if anybody wants to speak to this.
Hey, man. So for me, one of the struggles that I always face through is just being connected with like professors. I find that like most challenging, and because of that, I can be a little unmotivated or disconnected. I feel like from like the coursework. So it's just hard to do it all by yourself right now.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing and being the first one to share. And that's definitely such a valid concern that, not being able to be present with your professors or your teachers and, not getting a chance to have that, connection and, speak to some of, coursework or class material can make it super difficult during this time. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
We have a Shinaz that's wanting to say something. Feel free to unmute and speak.
So, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the struggles I had was definitely trying not to be distracted. I mean, in class, there was a strict no phone rule and all that. So just having all the technology at your hands during class and everything being remote, I think it's difficult trying to stay away from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Honestly, I feel like that's one probably a lot of us can relate to. I'm in school right now too, and I can say that it's so hard to not be on your phone or just any technology that you have, while being on your Zoom call because you're not really, with somebody in person. So it's kind of easier to, get away with it sometimes.
Yeah.
So
And
thank you
definitely
for sharing.
that discipline aspect too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. If anybody else wants to speak, we can maybe take one more. If not, we can move on. Oh, we have a chat.
Hello.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes. My thing. One of my struggles is as far as being a senior and about to graduate, and being a first generation graduate, and so there's a lot of stresses already that's having to deal with being the first in the family and trying your best to maintain a high, well, to maintain my 4-point GPA.
mhm.
And so, and then also what the young man had said earlier about the gentleman that had spoke first about that disconnect with your with your professors. I also find that with my classmates. And as far as being a person of color in a social science major, we're talking about a lot of the issues that are going on right now. And it just seems as if, I'm going by what the professor might be talking about, what the topic might be for the day. And I find myself when I say something that is always like I would say a lot of sighing going on in class, or the eye rolling, or like here she goes again. I mean, I just feel that we're in a class that's talking about these topics, and so if you don't want to hear what someone has to say, I mean, I guess the person might be maybe in the wrong I guess class. And now I'm starting to feel myself that I might even be in the wrong major, because and being at a predominantly white institute, and like I said, as a person of color, it's just always it's a daily struggle, because you live with it, you're learning about it, you're going to school with it, and there's just no turn off for me as a person of color, because it's just an ongoing everyday thing. The minute you turn on the news, that's all you hear about: the killings, the shootings, living in the city of Chicago, in the heart of the city. And it's just like, I'm sorry to be ranting on, but those are part of my struggles. Thank you for listening.
No, thank you so much for sharing. And you brought up such good points in regards to, being first generation, being a person of color, and, already facing those struggles, even when we're not necessarily online and doing school, but then to have this extra component of now being online and having to, really face these challenges alongside some of those other ones can be very overwhelming and stressful. So thank you so much for sharing. And I know we had another comment that says, as a freshman, it's hard to make new friends and with everything online. So, these are some really great points that you guys bring up, and inshallah, we'll continue to address them as we move forward.
Okay, so after speaking to some of the struggles that we're all facing, all students are facing, or anyone really that's remote right now, whether you're working from home or whether you're doing any kind of work from home, there's that struggle of lacking contact with other people and being able to develop a relationship with the people you're working with, or whether you're in class with, or your professors. And then it's not just that one struggle, just like we had somebody just mentioned, there's multiple struggles. It's kind of like a buildup, right? Which is making those feelings of unsurety or uncertainty, being overwhelmed. They're enhancing those feelings, unfortunately. So after having said all of that, I'd like for us to discuss what may be some positives of remote learning or being remote, because in every situation, there can be silver linings, no matter how small those silver linings are, can we find a ray of hope in those struggles? It could be the smallest thing. It could be the ability to be at home while you're remote. It could be the ability to not have to drive to campus, or saving money for filling up gas, anything like that. Is there anything any of you guys can think of that felt like it was a silver lining in the current situation right now? Or anything that's keeping you going, some positivity that's keeping you going. Oh, I see you raising your hand. Please feel free to unmute and speak up.
Yeah, I think for myself, at least one thing that that's working for me is most of my classes are asynchronous. So the fact that I can like hop in and out, have more flexibility, that's like really beneficial for me because I am a commuter. So I go to UIC. So like the commute is like an hour and a half for me, just one way. So like in the day I would spend 3 hours just traveling. But now that we are remote, it's like I have so much more time to do more things that I enjoy, and I'm able to like take a step back and like relax even, and really just take my time and not rush anything. And I feel like that's been a positive for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I see Shanaz is raising her hand. Feel free to unmute and share.
Sorry, I think I forgot to lower my hand from last time.
Oh, no problem.
Oh, that's okay. We do have a few things in the chat here. Not having to live my life by the metro schedule, it saves me 15 hours per week of travel time. Yeah, it's very similar to the point that Kanan just made, is time is being saved, which is when we were kind of in like that hustle that we were in pre-COVID, perhaps we were constantly at a loss of time. And now maybe we have too much time, which can also be a struggle as well, as we will kind of talk about later on, is you have all this time, but what are we doing with this time? Are we using it wisely? So definitely that's a good positive for us to mention. Anything else in that may be specific to your lives that you find to be helping you? Something you notice that you have now that you didn't before, or something you're able to do now that you weren't before?
Okay, no worries. We can definitely continue to move on, inshallah.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we've kind of mentioned before, and just to reiterate again, some of the cons that we might be facing during this time can include, difficult to see and hang with friends, our support systems, whether that again be family or friends. It might just be difficult to maintain some of those connections while going through a lot of these other things. And then we also have, sometimes it might be more difficult to maintain grades and keep up with schoolwork. And, as some of you guys were mentioning before, it's difficult to kind of have those connections with our professors and our teachers, and really focus on ourselves academically and, really try to excel in that way. It can be difficult when not being in person. And then everyone has access to different resources because of their own personal situations. And, it can be difficult for people who might not have access to certain resources that other people have. So, everybody's home situation is different. And so it can be, very different for everybody in terms of, the access that they have to some of the technological resources that others might have. And that thus kind of make it more difficult for them to, work and be productive during this time. And then finally, sometimes people have difficult family lives, which can then get in the way of having motivation, give more distractions, not have that support system, and just kind of showing that sometimes it's difficult for people to manage their home life as well as their school life. So, you know, when you're home all the time and have your family around, sometimes it can be difficult to really maintain focus and motivation for school. And so we want to recognize that these issues are very present within maybe some of us or all of us. And it's important to recognize that, you know, though we might not be going through certain things, there are a lot of us, a lot of our classmates and peers that might be going through some of these struggles. So it's great to kind of take a moment to just recognize what some of us might be going through.
Definitely.
We can move on to the next. Okay.
So now that Imaan has mentioned some of the cons that you guys even kind of mentioned as well, and she elaborated on, I do want to go into a little bit more of the pros. And my purpose of bringing this up is really to see if we can together, we can reframe the narrative here. Of course, there's many struggles, and that's what we're here to talk about and how we can deal with those struggles. But one of the ways to deal with your struggle or your negative thoughts or your worries is to kind of reframe the situation, see if we can find some light at the end of the tunnel, right? So having said that, I'm going to go over some pros of remote learning. Feel free to, comment or give me some feedback, or any others that you guys have thought of in the past couple minutes. Feel free to share those as well in the chat, or, unmute yourself. But the first one that I have here is opportunity to spend more time with family. Now, I know not all students are living with their families right now, especially if you're not from here. Maybe you're just staying at your apartment by yourself or something like that. But the people that maybe do commute, or people who are living with their families or had to go back home to live with their families and not be on campus, this is an opportunity that we may have not had before this, because of our busy schedules, because of just the goals we want to accomplish, especially being in college. We're constantly working towards something, right? Or in general in life, and we're constantly working towards something. Now, that being in quarantine has kind of put us at like a full stop. We're forced to do things that we normally maybe would not have chosen to do. One of those things is spending time with family, being at home with family. However, there are pros and cons to that factor in itself. But I think for many, it can be a pro. Maybe you're learning more about your families. Maybe you're having more conversations with your parents that you didn't before, or having more time to bond with your siblings, having more time to spend time with your pets. So anything like that. It's possibly making us more tolerant and patient with our surroundings, maybe giving us something a little more to be grateful for. So that's what I'll say to that first one. Second one here, having the privilege of continuing our education and staying safe during this pandemic. So again, a silver lining I think that not everybody has, where we're able to kind of continue our classes and continue working towards our degrees, or finishing up a thesis, whatever it is that our goals are. There are options to kind of get there while being safe. So again, another pro right there, being safe and still kind of getting the job done. However, it may not be in the way that we had imagined in the beginning, especially I think for the seniors in here, or even like the freshmen that are starting out. This is not how you imagined your freshman year of college. The seniors that are ending, this is not how you imagined your last year of college. You anticipated being on campus, doing things, having a relationship with your professors, going to club meetings, attending events. Those are all things that everyone not just anticipates, but every senior deserves. So there's, another thing with that, but we are able to stay safe, and we can't deny that, I guess, which is why I wanted to say that. Number 3, we have, this is one I got a lot of feedback on from other college students, was having the flexibility and listening to lectures and having access to material and assignments like all the time, because everything's online, right? So people that work, people that have other responsibilities, they're being able to fit in their lectures at other times, going at their own pace, and studying for the exam when they can, and kind of going over lectures over and over again instead of, what maybe when classes were in session, it was just that one lecture. And if you didn't attend it, then you kind of miss out on learning that material. So that's another pro there. Number 4, we have in regard to time. So easier to multitask and save time. So some feedback I did get was while you're listening to a lecture, while you're in like a class discussion, perhaps, getting some work, like putting in your laundry real quick, or like folding your laundry while you're listening, or being able to make your food real quick in like a 15-minute break and eat it while you're watching a lecture, or take a quick nap. So a lot of these things, because you're at home, you're able to do a lot of it instead of maybe driving home and during a 3-hour break and then eating and taking a nap and then driving back to campus. So some things, these are some pros, some silver linings that we had thought of to kind of reframe the narrative a little bit, see if we can acknowledge the cons, acknowledge the negatives, but see if we can shift our mindset to focus on the positives as well. So that's what I'll say about the pros here. Can move on.
All right, so the next thing we wanted to bring up is how do we even recognize that our mental health might be deteriorating during this time? And this can be, I think this is an interesting topic to kind of just keep in mind and be kind of aware of within ourselves, because it's not always as, visible sometimes when our mental health might be deteriorating, or, we might just be having a prolonged period of, not really feeling too well or doing too well. And we often don't really allow ourselves to sit down and like take a step back and think about it. How is my mental health doing? Is it okay? Is it like going down for too long? So it's just some things to really keep in mind and really just be self-aware of, and the reason we want to discuss this as well is, if our mental health is deteriorating, or if we're noticing kind of a downward, it going downward, we want to kind of just be aware of that so we can really take any means necessary to kind of, work to bring it back up, whether that means doing some things ourselves and, using our own stress management or coping skills, which we will be discussing a little bit later within this presentation, or even if we wanted to seek out professional help, and whether that be, seeking out therapy or, reaching out to any of our maybe support systems that we have. So it's really important to kind of, really be mindful of your own mental health. And so some of the ways that, we can recognize that this is happening to us, and also this is not, the only 3 things that can be taking place during this time, but these are 3 things to just keep in mind. So the first one is prolonged depression, excessive fears, and worries. And so for this one, it can really just be or this one really encompasses changes in our mood, motivation, enjoyment, having difficulty concentrating, or feeling prolonged hopelessness. So what I do want to reiterate here is that word prolonged. So, of course, we all have spouts of, sadness or feeling kind of depressed or down throughout our day, or, throughout our week. But, if we're really trying to really emphasize, or kind of look into our mental health over a longer period of time, it's really important to recognize that, if we're experiencing these things, but for a prolonged period of time, then maybe it's something to kind of take a step back and think about, how can I really, work to increase my mental health, or, try to bring it back up maybe. So, and I definitely don't want to also negate the experiences that, we're going through for those who might just have those small bursts of like, feeling sad or not feeling that great, because of course that is very, that happens to all of us. And it is, something to keep in mind, and it is something that is very important. But also I do want to keep emphasizing that if we do see it for a prolonged period of time, it is something to kind of, take into consideration and really recognize, so that we can work to build that back up. Just like our physical health, our mental health is just as important, and though it might not be as, apparent as our physical health, it is something to just keep in mind. So this aspect can also be visible through avoiding people, withdrawing from people, being constantly aggressive or agitated, using substances. There are many different things that people kind of end up doing when their mental health is deteriorating. So these are just things to keep in mind, just to recognize those signs. And the next one is dramatic changes in eating and sleeping habits. So when I say dramatic changes, it means, you know, either having really difficulty sleeping or not sleeping at all for longer periods of time, or maybe extreme, you know, weight gain or weight loss over, you know, a little bit longer of a period of time. These kind of things do also show that our mental health is deteriorating. So again, just I want to emphasize the word dramatic because it's not necessarily, you know, just here and there, but when our mental health is really deteriorating at a quick rate, then it's usually over a longer period of time as well. And then finally, what I have here is difficulty maintaining daily responsibilities. So this can be severe enough to create physical inability to perform certain tasks or activities, or mild enough to create to cause a person to be overwhelmed by simple tasks. So I also want to emphasize too, when our mental health is significantly deteriorating, it is evidenced by disruption to one's daily life, or difficulty with even just getting through the day. So if we do notice within ourselves or others that, you know, they have kind of found it difficult to carry on day-to-day tasks, or are just finding it difficult to even really kind of continue on their daily life or what they usually do, then this can also show that their mental health could be deteriorating as well. So these are just 3 things, but again, there's definitely more that can, you know, really show this as well. So definitely something to just keep in mind.
Okay, so that would be kind of the information we wanted to share with you guys, kind of a good starting point. We want to get into the scenarios now. So these may be scenarios that each of you might relate to at some level or know someone that's been going through something like this. So feel free to jump in. We are going to be doing this together, kind of talking about how we can help the person in the scenario. Of course, we will be chiming in and giving you know, advice to the best of our ability, but I'd like to, you know, hear some insight as well and some input from all of you. So we'll take a minute to read the scenario here. So the first one is feeling trapped at home. So a 19-year-old female just started her sophomore year in college. Due to the concern for her immunocompromised grandmother living with her family, she has had to be very cautious when going outside. She feels like this was the worst summer of her life as she was unable to join any group hangouts or go on a hiking trip with her friends. Now that the semester has begun, she is having difficulty concentrating during online lectures. All of her classes are online, so she has no reason to go to campus. Driving to and from school used to be her alone time to listen to her music, reflect on her day, and get some privacy. She is starting to feel suffocated in her home environment and lashing out on her siblings. They don't understand why she is behaving this way, as she should be happy that classes are easier since they're all online. Now, like I was saying, this could be a scenario that you guys can relate to or know of friends or peers that are currently going through something like this. Now, having read that, what are some things this girl is possibly feeling? If I was asking you guys for some feeling words here. Feel free to say them in the chat or unmute yourself or raise your hand, whatever you'd like. What could be some things that she's feeling? So I'll kind of start off with one. It could be that she's feeling some resentment towards the situation, frustrated, loss of freedom. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Those are all great. Frustration is there. There is anger there. There is not being able to go, not having been able to go on the trip and not having been able to see her friends. There is that feeling of isolation, like she is being forced to isolate herself, and not like someone's like locking her up in her room, but it's like it's her grandmother, so she's going to want to be careful, right? So she's taking that, being mindful and taking that decision for her and her family, but still that feeling of isolation will come from there. Any other feeling words that we can think of that she might be feeling? Okay, well, I think this is good for us to work with so far. Loss of freedom, frustrated. resentment, overwhelmed for sure. There's a lot going on here. She's not being able to concentrate, so she must be overwhelmed. Lonely, definitely, that's a good one. My next question will be, how can we help her? How can she overcome this? If any of you have been in this situation, is there something that you had done or an advice you would have given to this girl if she were your friend or acquaintance that may help her get through this? We've got a few different issues going on here, right? So she's feeling isolated. She's not being able to reach out to her support or kind of see her support system. She's not being able to go to campus. She's not getting her alone time, and she's lashing out on her siblings. And it seems like no one's understanding why she's behaving that way. So there's multiple things going on here. Thank you for sharing, Sarah. Something that always helps for me is doing group studies with friends over FaceTime or Zoom. It allows you to see your friends and still spend your time in a productive way. That is a great suggestion, because this is kind of the new world that we're living in, right? The virtual world. So if we're doing remote learning, all the other things that we are missing out on, let's use that same platform, that same resource to get satisfaction in those departments as well. That is a great suggestion. Anything else that helps you guys, or anything else you can think of that might help her? Thank you for sharing. She should redefine her alone time to some part of her daily routine, as well as try to stay in touch with her friends through FaceTime, phone calls, video games. As for her family, she should try opening up to them when she is ready, if she's able to talk that candidly with her family. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you make a really good point, because even with all of that, sometimes it doesn't feel enough. Because at the end of the day, you're not really being able to leave this environment that you're in, right? It's still kind of a constant every day. But we can keep trying, and these are all the things we can do to try and kind of better that moment at least, and kind of use it as a form of an outlet for sure. Thank you for sharing that. And I would 100% agree with these suggestions, that finding an outlet within the boundary that she and her family have created for themselves. So that boundary is not being able to do certain things, right? But what can she do with the privileges that she does have? And like you had mentioned, using the virtual world, using FaceTime, Zoom, Netflix watch parties. There's like all of these things, right, that you can use. But at the same time, that frustration is not just coming from not being able to do those things. That frustration can also be coming from losing control, because that sense of control is very important for us as human beings. And there's a lot of things that are not under our control anymore, which is why it is equally important to understand what is in our control, what can we do, and what we can't do. And when it comes to resentment and blaming, if the issue is something that's not in our control, we can't really blame ourselves or the people around us. Like she's lashing out on her siblings. Are her siblings really at fault here? Not necessarily, right? So it's a lot of work we have to do within ourselves, kind of evaluate and understand, why are we feeling this way? And it's justified. It's valid for us. Our feelings are validated 100%. But at the same time, a lot is not under our control right now. The only things we can do is change the way we perceive our situation, perceive the people and the things around us, and control the things that are in our hands. And that would include how do we use our time, the time that we have? How do we use resources that we have to make us feel better? How do we take care of ourselves? we are in control of our bodies, right? To an extent, at least. So using what we have to make ourselves feel better or allow ourselves to feel better. And it's not just, and a lot of the work is done by ourselves, but our support system is there for a reason too, right? They play a huge role. And reaching out to them, I would suggest to this girl to reach out in the ways that she can. I hope that makes sense. If anybody has any questions, I see another comment here. I think physical affection is a lot of people's love language as well. For example, my dad is quarantining right now and I can't hug him for a couple of weeks after not seeing him for a month. It's stressful, but words of affirmation helps in the meantime. That is a great point that you make. Love language, physical affection, physical touch, that is something that we will definitely touch upon in more in detail later on in this presentation, but you bring up a really good point. So kind of working with what you have, like that is a sacrifice that you and your dad both have to make, right? You're not able to kind of give each other that comfort, but you're saying words of affirmation kind of suffice for the time. Thank you for bringing that up. We have another comment here. Sometimes I feel that I'm burdening my family. Yeah, that is something that we feel as humans, like that's kind of one of our biggest hindrances in opening up to people, because we don't want to burden them, right? But at the same time, if they are a support system, if we are going to listen to them when they need the help, this is a two-way street. I'm not saying completely just only vent to your family members or your friends. That's why we have other outlets that we use for ourselves as well, that we will discuss later on when we talk a little bit more about the stress management techniques and how to soothe ourselves.
And I do want to emphasize,
thank you to everyone who participated.
And I do want to quickly emphasize there too, the importance of having a support system and having, either family or friends in place. And I know it's very difficult to sometimes feel like you might be burdening your family or burdening your support system, but we'll definitely in a few scenarios be talking about support systems as well. And so we can touch on that a little bit then too.
Yeah. And thank you so much, everyone who participated. Thank you so much. That was very helpful and great points. We can move on to the next scenario. All right, so let's take a minute to read this next scenario. So the topic here is overwhelmed with managing schoolwork. So a 21-year-old male college junior is taking 18 credit hours this semester so he can graduate on time. 2 of those classes are labs that he has to attend on campus twice a week. He works a part-time job at Target 4 days out of the week. Only during COVID is what I meant. Since the beginning of the semester, he hasn't completed any of his assignments on time. He falls asleep while listening to the recorded online lectures after work. He is unable to take notes or retain any of the information from the lectures. He's feeling extremely overwhelmed and distressed. His fear of failure has taken over and he is unable to manage his schoolwork. What do you suggest he do to overcome this fear? How can we help him? Now, before we try to answer that question, let's kind of go over some things he may be feeling. He's got a lot going on, right? Sounds like he's very overwhelmed. His time is filled up with a lot of things, a lot of classes, work. Let's hear some things that he might be feeling in his everyday life. Feel free to use the chat as well. Okay. Exhausted. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Exhausted. He's doing a lot. And this kind of goes back to that point that we were making. We have all of this time and some of us are doing too much with this time and overwhelming ourselves and getting exhausted, and some of us may be procrastinating and not doing as much with the time. So it goes both ways, and our goal here is to find a happy medium, right? So exhausted, overwhelmed, great words there. Anxious, yeah, definitely. he has a fear of failure here. So that fear could be coming from anxiety, it could be sadness, it could be pressure, a lot of things that he could be feeling right now. So pressurized, yeah, thank you. So when it comes to fear, that fear is coming from somewhere, right? It's coming from some type of pressure, some type of inability when you're not able to do something or fulfill the expectations you have from yourself. Then you may feel like you're going to fail. You may start feeling overwhelmed when you feel like you're not going to meet your own expectations or the expectations of somebody, or like your parents or your siblings or someone who, holds that place in your life. And when you feel like you're not going to be able to live up to their expectations, you may have these fears. Now, what can one do? The first thing is to face the fear, where it's important to be aware of where is this fear coming from, and check the facts. Like, am I actually going to, because his biggest fear here is like that he's not going to graduate on time, but is that the reality? Is that what's going to happen, or is that what he thinks is going to happen? So check the facts and face the fear. I'm feeling this way. I'm unsure of my future. I am feeling overwhelmed because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm not being able to manage my schoolwork. Face the facts, accept what's happening in your life at the time before you run to find solutions to each of those problems. Before you try to figure out how to fix everything, realize what is happening in front of you first. So that would be my first kind of pointer there, is face the fear, figure out the foundation of that fear. Where is it coming from? Now, having said that, another comment I would make there is when it comes to time management. Now, majority of you guys, and I'm assuming all of you guys are students here, please feel free to share. How do you guys manage your time when it comes to planning, when it comes to figuring out how to manage your time? Like, what are you guys using? What resources or what things are you guys doing to kind of keep yourselves in check, making sure you're getting your stuff done? What would you suggest to this person so he can manage his work? Okay, while I wait to see if anybody comments on that question or answers that question, another comment I want to make is hold yourself to more realistic standards. Very important. He is obviously doing too much, right? He is doing a lot, and maybe he doesn't have a choice. Maybe this is what he needs to do to get to where he wants to be. I'm not going to say where he needs to be. I'm going to say where he wants to be. Taking the 18 credit hours, working 4 days out of the week. There was an analogy I was told yesterday where fill your plate only as much. What was it, Imaan? What's that analogy? I want to ask you to say it because I don't want to say it wrong.
I think it was something like fill your plate with as much as you could like handle or eat, like only take as much as you can handle, basically.
Yeah, only take as much as you can handle. So hold yourself to more realistic standards. And for that, it's important for us to be self-aware, right? Like, be aware of what your standard is, be aware of what your expectations are of yourself, and are those realistic expectations? We do have a comment here. A planner where, planners are great to write everything down. When is what due? When is which exam? Those great for students, great for everyone, actually. Planners are great. So yeah, definitely planning is good, but do not over plan either. And that kind of goes with the realistic standards. Utilizing the resources you have. Somebody did mention talk to your professor. So great, talk to your professor, develop that relationship, which is something that's difficult for us, but we have to try, right? There's email, there's during the Zoom call, setting up a Zoom session individually with your professor. Everyone's in the same state. It's not like only one person is going through this. Everybody is going through the same thing right now. I assume And I hope that professors are being more understanding about this entire situation and everything that's happening, whether it involves assignments, exams, whatever it is. I hope they are being more understanding. So reach out to your professors, develop a relationship with them. And perhaps, I mean, for this individual in this scenario, I would suggest, if possible, reducing those work hours. Maybe he thought that because it's COVID and like he's in quarantine and he's doing online schooling, he can work more, and it just didn't work out. So possibly reducing work hours, I would say.
And I also just want to quickly mention to, but something that really works for me in these type of situations is to really schedule yourself out. So, you know, if you know you have a lot due and a lot going on, it helps me to make a really detailed schedule of what I have due, when I'm going to exactly be doing it, what I'm going to be doing every day, just to kind of at least help me manage my stress in the sense that, you know, now I know exactly what I need to do and on what day. And if I continue with my schedule, then I know that I can manage everything that I need to do. So it kind of helps me not be as overwhelmed or stressed with the work that I have. So if you're somebody who might benefit from something like this, I'd really suggest to try that as well.
Definitely, 100%. If anybody has any other comments or feedback about this scenario, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we will move on to the next scenario.
Okay, yeah, we can move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So the third one deals with the lack of a social life or support system. So the scenario is an 18-year-old female just started her freshman year of college. She was looking forward to living away at U of I with her friends, but due to COVID, she had to do classes from home. Her parents aren't allowing her to move on to campus because of this. She was looking forward to college and finally having the chance to move away from home, but now she barely has a chance to see her friends, let alone get out of the house. Because of this, she has been feeling increasingly alone and disconnected from her close friends and finds herself fighting with her parents and siblings all the time. She occasionally FaceTimes or calls her friends, but not being able to see them in person has been making it harder to stay in touch and connected. She finds herself feeling irritable and overwhelmed all the time because of this and doesn't know who to talk to or get support from. So I just want to quickly mention as well, you know, if anybody would like to mention some of the things that you maybe noticed that this individual might be feeling during this time, something that maybe you can catch from the scenario, please feel free to throw it into the chat. And if you can relate to this, or if you've maybe been in a similar situation, or if you know somebody in that situation. So does anybody have any thoughts about, you know, what she might be feeling? Well, I can say definitely right off the bat that she is feeling overwhelmed. She's feeling very stressed and maybe lonely. Another big thing that I catch here is that, you know, she is maybe feeling some resentment towards either her, you know, either the situation at large, maybe resentment towards her family for not letting her go. Again, resentment towards the situation. And, you know, so resentment in general is something that I really find visible in this sense. And, you know, it's interesting also as well, because, you know, when we do face in situations like these, when we do face resentment, or we are kind of looking at the situation in maybe more of a negative light, it can be a little bit tricky, because it does really kind of lead to that mindset of really seeing the situation and seeing these type of things in a very negative sense. And thus kind of, you know, building that mindset of maybe nothing might ever end up being good enough, because, you know, you are faced with like a big situation like this. And then, you know, with a lot of some of these other things happening, it could be difficult to maybe kind of pull yourself out of that negative mindset maybe, and kind of feel more positively towards the situation. So it's definitely understandable. And I know that a lot of people might be, even if you're not really facing the situation, I'm sure a lot of us can maybe relate to moments of feeling, you know, just that lack of control, or maybe feeling, you know, really overwhelmed because you don't really have your friends to kind of go talk to or see face to face, or maybe might not be getting along with your family as well, and maybe just don't have, you know, anybody to necessarily talk to or confide in. And, you know, so even if you might not be a college freshman, I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this. I do here want to emphasize the importance of having a social system, you know, whether or not it be people you see in person, or, you know, people that you might need to reach out to or even family, especially in times of, difficulty or where our mental health might be deteriorating or we might be struggling. It's so important to have people that we can kind of reach out to or confide in, and really, relate to in these situations. So I would really, really urge for those of us who might feel ourselves kind of pulling back, having difficulty with, maybe avoiding or not really seeing people at all, or not really feeling like, you have anybody to talk to and kind of just like avoiding and being by yourself. I would really, really encourage all of us to, use our support systems or really actively try to find our support systems to kind of help during this time. So again, just to kind of emphasize. But in this situation, I would like to kind of pose the question as well, in situations of maybe feeling alone, overwhelmed, not having that support system. If anybody has, felt this, what are some of the things that you maybe do to kind of, pull ourselves out of these situations, or, maybe feel better or more connected to other people? So definitely please feel free to share on the chat. Give it a second to see if anybody wants to. But some things that I think really stress in these kind of situations when we feel ourselves not really, able to speak to our friends or your family, especially because, we can't even see our friends in person. Some of the things that I would really suggest that we do is there's different ways to build our support systems. And one of the things that we really can do in situations like these is, even though our schools are online, there are ways to kind of connect with support systems through organizations in school, and finding our own community through school. So I know a lot of you guys might be in MSA, either Elmhurst or DePaul, or maybe other MSAs, but organizations like that, or if there's other organizations that you can be a part of to really explore some of your interests and maybe build connections through that way, that can be a really great way to find your own community and, continue to meet and discuss with people and converse with people. So it's really, really important to, maybe, you can find your support system through that way as well. And then again, just, really trying to focus on access to resources within our school situations. Because again, even though we are online, there are ways to kind of get access to, or take advantage of some of the resources that we do have. And whether that be reaching out to our school counselors, a lot of the time, even though we're all online, there's still ways to kind of speak to your school counselor or school therapist, and really have those, Zoom sessions and take advantage of that resource as well to kind of use them as a support system. So there's that resource as well. Even if we're, like Saima was saying, if we're feeling overwhelmed with school or, don't feel much support in regards to our academic life, we can reach out to our professors, reach out to TAs, reach out to people who can really maybe try to understand your situation, or at least be aware of your situation, so that we can kind of tackle some of these things that we are facing difficulty in. And especially also when in terms of like dealing with your home environment and not being able to connect with family, or maybe just having difficulty in that, I think it's so important to find different outlets maybe. So that can be, if you find yourself having difficulty talking to family, or, relating to family, and find yourself arguing, taking some time for yourself, maybe, going on a run or doing something that you really enjoy, or, doing something where you can kind of release some of that energy or frustration and, give yourself that time to really relax and focus on yourself, can be ways to really maybe deal with some of these situations that we might be having at home as well. So yeah, so definitely. And somebody put in the chat, advised her to not have a fossilized mindset. Yeah, no, definitely. Sometimes it can get in these situations, get really easy to get stuck in a certain mindset, and as I mentioned earlier too, is just, having that, like being stuck in that negative mindset, and not, which then doesn't really allow us to kind of, see some of those positive aspects of what's going on, or really, see things through a more positive light. It can be really easy to, just be stuck in that mindset. So again, just this aspect of being self-aware, with you guys being here and listening to these conversations, it can really give us a chance to teach ourselves to be self-aware in these situations if we are caught in them. And then, like Saima was saying earlier, work to kind of change that narrative. We can move on to the next one, because I know we're running a little short on time. So scenario number 4 is navigating post-college in a COVID world. So this scenario reads, a 22-year-old male is a senior in college and will be graduating May of 2021. He was looking forward to having fun his senior year, but is becoming increasingly sad and down at the prospect of having to finish his last year of college from home. He feels like he is missing out on his college experience because now he'll be unable to travel with friends, attend college events, and might even miss out on graduation being in person. Sorry, typo. And on top of all of that, he has no clue what he's going to do after college. He originally had a job lined up in his field, but they rescinded the offer due to COVID. Everything seems so up in the air now, and he can't help but feel scared and depressed. Everything would have been so much easier and much more fun if it weren't for COVID, but now he has no idea what to do or who to talk to about it. He feels so lost and upset all the time because he isn't enjoying school right now and he doesn't really know what is going to happen with his future. So again, this situation could be something a lot of us are facing, maybe the first part of the scenario or even the second part of the scenario. Or we might just be able to relate or know of people who are going through this. So I just want to quickly give people the chance to kind of speak to this. If you're maybe experiencing this or you know somebody who is experiencing this, what do you feel as though this individual is feeling? So if anybody wants to type in the chat or speak to it, please do.
Hey, I feel like I can relate to this because, well, I'm 21 and I'm a senior right now at UIC. And I literally planned my 4-year outline so that my last year could be like my chill year. So I get to like go to more events, just go to the city more, have fun, and like also spend time in my minor, which is art. So this year is supposed to be like my chill year, relax year, but I definitely feel like things didn't go as planned. And like that kind of put a lot of things into like perspective, and I had to sit down and like really think what my next move was. I think I've kind of adjusted now, but definitely in the beginning it was scary. Like this is like unprecedented.
Thank you so much for sharing, because I know a lot of us might be, experiencing something similar. And something really important to recognize in this scenario, and with both the first part and the second part, is that lack of control that we might be feeling during this time. With COVID happening and not being able to see friends or have college events or graduation, not necessarily something we can control. And then even the latter part of, companies or, struggling with your future, finding jobs post college, again, things that are out of our control. And often those things can be the most stressful because we find ourselves feeling so uncertain with what we're going to do, and we have difficulty kind of recognizing what or realizing or even thinking about, like, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? What can I do to change this? And often we can't find things to do in these type of situations. So I think it's really important to first recognize, that aspect of what is in our control and then what isn't in our control. We have a comment, which I want to read really quick, which is, he shouldn't let his fears consume him. I relate to him a lot with the job loss, as it seems really hard to get a job right now, especially professionally, but he shouldn't give up and be stuck in the past and let it control him more than it has. Eventually someone will give him a job and it might be better than what he was hoping for. That's a really great point. And, it's really great to, see you mention that, because I know sometimes it can be difficult to kind of come to this mindset of, it'll be okay, it'll be fine. So in this type of situation, I do want to quickly tie it to a small aspect of religion, or Islam, which I think is relevant and helpful to all of us. Of course, that aspect of, what is meant to be will essentially be. And, this kind of relates into the topic of, what's in our control and what's out of our control. Because if we spend our time focusing a lot about what is out of our control, that is what gives us a lot of anxiety. And so it's really important to kind of, take a step back, be a little self-aware within ourselves and realize, okay, there's certain things that I really can't control during this time, but what I can control is how I feel and approach a situation. And so in this situation, I would really advise or kind of encourage some of us to Really for the first part of the scenario, maybe try to make up for experiences that you might be missing. So though we can't control, graduating, having an in-person graduation or things like that, we can control maybe just having a smaller version of that, putting something together with friends, doing something with family to maybe make up for the missed time or lost time. But there's certain things, what I want to emphasize is that we can, take control of or have control over, which can really help at least try to pull up or bring up our own mindset for these situations instead of dwelling on kind of what we really can't control. And then especially for the latter part of it as well, just as, somebody mentioned in the chat that, maybe try to kind of focus or pull ourselves away from that mindset. It can also be maybe use this time to be applying for a lot of jobs, use this time to kind of put yourself out there a little bit more, really reach out to people, network, kind of use your resources, really take advantage of what we can right now to really, focus on what we do have in our control. And again, when I mentioned religion as well, or Islam as well, it's something that can bring us a little bit of ease in times that are difficult. And I know I speak for personal experience in that it has brought me a lot of ease in times of uncertainty, that aspect of, inshallah, like what's meant to be will be. And, everything that happens to us is something we can essentially handle. We're not tested with what we can't handle. And, I know it is difficult sometimes to really truly believe in those type of things, especially when dealing with a lot of uncertainty and struggle. But sometimes reminders can help, or, just really trying to reframe and kind of focus a little bit on the things we can control, the positives, and really trying within ourselves to really work within our mindset and really try to make active changes so that we can feel better about situations that we can't control. So those are just some things that I can definitely mention in regards to this scenario. So it is 7:03 right now, and we will be going until 7:15. So if anybody does need to leave, please go ahead and do so. But we will be kind of going through some stress management and coping techniques, and hopefully try to end by 7:15. Okay, so now we'll go into a little bit on how do we de-stress. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. Okay, great. So over here, I have listed some ways that we can really manage our stress. Again, a lot of these times, as we've kind of been mentioning before, really requires our own effort in these kind of situations to really, work to change our mindset, actively work to really focus on our own mental health and, reframe our thoughts and our feelings. So, a lot of these are not the end all be all. There's definitely way more things that we can do. I'm sure there are many different coping mechanisms that work for all of us. But what I do want to highlight here is the really the self-awareness of the coping mechanisms that work for us. So really taking the time to think about what are certain things that really make me feel better, make me feel happy, and really help me de-stress. And it can be some of these things that are listed on the slide, but it can be other things as well. So really just taking that time to actively think about, what are the things that help me so that when I'm feeling very stressed and overwhelmed, I can actively do to bring my stress levels down or bring my anxiety or, down. So some of the things I'll quickly go through is that, exercise and physical activity. And I know that we've heard this, we hear these things a lot from people that, always exercise, drink more water, do this, and that'll help you. But I think that in this situation, it's kind of important to recognize when I say exercise and physical activity, I don't mean necessarily, go for like a mile jog or, go to the gym and spend an hour there. If that helps you, definitely do that. But sometimes, physical activity and exercise can just be go on a 5-minute walk, go stand outside and feel the fresh air, just, move around a little bit, maybe just take a lap around your house and, just get your blood flowing and kind of, at least you're getting up and moving. Really do what is you're capable of and that you can handle right now. Definitely, as Saima had mentioned earlier, don't take on things that that you personally can't do, but really try to focus on things that you can handle and really deal with. So there's exercise and physical activity, definitely talking it out, as we spoke of, having that support system, which this again reiterates. We have creating healthy boundaries. So this definitely means, and I know this can be difficult for a lot of us, but when I say healthy boundaries, I mean, being okay with, sometimes saying no to a hangout or something if you know that you maybe are struggling with your mental health that day and don't want to see people, or just allowing yourselves to feel the way you're feeling in the current moment, and really experience what you're feeling, and without having to really put yourself at the expense. So what I mean by this too is that, if sometimes we might feel compelled to, go out and do something for other people, or have trouble saying no in certain situations, but just having those boundaries for ourselves and really focusing on taking that active step to focus on our own mental health can definitely decrease our stress. And then we have manage your time, which we definitely discussed a little bit earlier as well, through schedules, checklists. We have journaling as well, which I know a lot of us might just overlook, but it is something that is extremely helpful. And, whether that be just writing down positives in your day, or if you're just feeling really stressed and just writing down situations, or writing down, um, writing down in a journal at that time where we're feeling very stressed, just to let out that anxiety, is something that can be very helpful, and often overlooked as well. So, and then finally, which Saima is going to go into a little more in the next few slides, is this aspect of mindfulness. And I know a lot of us might not recognize what mindfulness is, so I do just want to quickly give you the definition of it. But mindfulness is just the ability to be present and fully engaged with whatever we're doing at that particular moment. So free from distraction and judgment, just being aware of our own thoughts and our own feelings. So just really grounding yourself in the moment. And Saima will go on in the next couple of slides to give you some examples of how to use mindfulness to really help you. But yeah, this isn't often a topic that's very overlooked as well and not fully understood, but it's something that can be very, very helpful.
Okay, so self-soothing is a type of self-care that is used for distress tolerance. So any type of distress situation, any thoughts of feeling overwhelmed or uncertainty, any feeling pressure, all of those things that we've been talking about for this past hour, basically. And the reason why I'm choosing to go over self-soothing using the 5 senses is, thus far, we've kind of talked about our mental health and our emotional health, right? The feelings that we're feeling, the thoughts we may be having while we're going through this time. When it comes to the senses, that's something that's within us. Those are physical attributes, to be able to touch and to be able to hear, see, taste. These are all, I think I missed one. See, there you go, vision. To be able to do all these things are physical attributes of our body, and the reason why I want to go through this is that the issue here is our thoughts and feelings, right? And the things that are happening around us. Sometimes we look to external factors to come and solve those issues for us. But what I want to bring out is that we can use what we have within ourselves to make ourselves feel better, to take care of ourselves in that moment, to be more aware, to be more self-sufficient, that if we're trying to tackle that feeling of overwhelmedness, to that feeling of being pressured, then let me use my senses and be more mindful of what's happening, find something more pleasant and experience and be more present in it to calm myself down. First one we can go into is vision. So if we look at this slide here, when it comes to vision, we all know what vision is, it's what we're looking at. So being mindful in what you're looking at, no excess thoughts, no overthinking in that moment, no thinking about, I want to reiterate this one over and over again, no thinking about the past or the future, just taking in what is directly in front of your eyes. So right now, I feel like for the past couple months, the one thing that's been kind of helping us going, or helping us and keeping on helping us, is that we used to live in a time in 2019 where things were better. We're gonna be hopefully living in a time in 2021, 2022 when things will be better. But what about what's happening right now in this moment? Are we really processing what's happening right now? To be constantly living in the past or what the potential future might be can sometimes be detrimental to our mental and emotional health, because we're not acknowledging anything around us. We've all been, I can speak for myself right now and say, I've been kind of living in a daze where I'm just like, okay, things are happening. Let me just go through the motions and get through the day and then get through the night and then hopefully get through another day tomorrow. almost become about survival. But in order to keep ourselves in check, it is important to be mindful of the moment, which is why we're going to go over vision. So if you look here, it could be as simple as any of these things on this visual here. So going outside at night, looking at the moon, looking at the stars, listen to what you are hearing while you're looking at the stars. Try to wipe out those negative thoughts. The reason why I have Netflix there is that we can use that external resource of going online and watching a movie, watching a show, something that's pleasant to our eyes, that's calming us down, whatever is helping us relieve that stress, whether it be looking at flowers, going on a walk, goes into that physical activity, looking at a candle, looking sunrise, sunset. The reason why I put the shopping cart with the laptop is because now we're more so doing online shopping. Retail therapy is a real thing. Everything in moderation will only help us. We can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, I know we have a couple minutes left, so hopefully we'll try to get through this as fast as possible.
I'm gonna try to go through it real quick. Hearing, I mentioned it a little bit. Listening to soothing sounds. I have a link here that we'll send in the chat. I would recommend this one. It's kind of like relaxation noises, like white noise for studying, for sleeping, for any of those things. If you want to check out that channel, feel free to do so. It's more just like calming techniques, and it's a way to kind of get us to focus and concentrate better. So listening to soothing sounds, and when you're listening, maybe closing your eyes, so all you're doing is just listening in that moment, being mindful of the noises around you. Now that could be when you're listening and you're looking at something, right? When you're on a walk, whatever does the trick for you, whether it's singing, whether it's humming, whether it's listening to something of your own choice, I would say. So that would be hearing. We can move on to the next. Then we have smell. So yeah, I mean, it's fall. A lot of people like their candles right now. So kind of taking in that smell, and maybe it'll take you to a very pleasant place in that moment. What are some of your favorite scents? Let's explore that. Are you a coffee drinker? Are you a tea drinker? What is that scent that gets you in a calm mood? And what is that smell that perhaps makes you happy? It makes you forget all of your worries in that moment. These are the little things and little resources we can use to help ourselves, instead of maybe looking out to external factors to come and help us. So another thing I would definitely recommend is, if you haven't yet tried essential oils, getting maybe a diffuser, if not just like smelling essential oils. I know eucalyptus is really, someone mentioned, I just want to clarify this, it's not the YouTube link. If someone could post a YouTube link, it's actually a YouTube channel that I saw on YouTube. It's not like my YouTube channel, just want to clarify that, but that you can definitely explore. We'll send it in the chat. But yeah, eucalyptus is very good for stress. Lavender, tea tree oil, peppermint, these are all great scents that calm the human body. And some of these other things, some people are into baking, opening the window while driving, smelling fresh air, smelling the flowers around you, all great ways to self-soothe. Move on to the next. Taste. Now, here's one where, what's your comfort food? Explore that a little bit. What is that one food that if you're really sad, or if you're anxious, or if you're angry, or if you're upset, we have things that make us feel better. It could be a Starbucks drink. It could be something that we treat ourselves with. It could be a brownie. It could be anything of that sort. Of course, in moderation, we want to be mindful when we're eating too of what we're putting into our body and how it is going to affect us. But when it comes to feeling better, if it's in moderation, definitely go for it. So drinking your favorite drink, cooking is something that's therapeutic for many people. The process is something that one can get lost in tasting the food and bettering the flavor and figuring out how to make it even better. It's all a part of mindfulness. Taking yourself physically taking yourselves out of the distressed situation that you're in, the distressed mindset that you're in, and putting yourselves in a more relaxing mindset. It's a strategy that we will have to teach ourselves to do consistently. It's something within ourselves. And then I think we have the last one. This is touch. We kind of talked about this in the beginning of the presentation, was because due to social distancing and quarantining, if this is your love language, it may be a difficult thing for you to kind of grasp that you're not able to get a hug from your friend or your dad who's quarantining or anything like that. And that can be difficult. So, okay, if I'm not being able to do that, what's the next step down? Someone had said words of affirmation earlier. That's great. So being aware of what will work for you. So a lot of these things here, taking a shower, getting a massage, wearing comfy clothes, most, what else did I not say? Spending time with your pet, hot and cold compresses. I will speak to this a little bit. When it comes to anxiety, when you're feeling anxious, one of the symptoms can be that your body temperature can increase. So cold compresses can bring it down and bring you back to a more calm state. So that is something I'll speak to a little bit. Or when you're in a state of anger, or you're feeling super overwhelmed or super stressed out, body temperature can increase. So cold compresses is something that can help. Stress balls. So all these things that you guys can take a look at here. Most importantly, notice, be mindful of what touch is doing for you. I can say all of these things and you can try them, but you won't know that it's working for you unless you acknowledge and be mindful of what it's doing for you in that moment. So I believe that is the last of the 5 senses. Right.
Yeah. And yeah, just to like wrap it up really fast, this was a small taste into what mindfulness really is. And it is a very useful method. A lot of the times it can help ground ourselves in times of really increased anxiety or increased stress. It can really help us kind of relax in that moment, or, at least feel calm and collected for a moment, so that we can really, know what we're feeling and know what we're experiencing and really help us. So if you definitely want any more information on mindfulness, we can definitely speak to it a lot. Please, reach out to us, reach out to Project Taqwa, and we can give you more information on that. But yeah, thank you so much for everybody who joined. And we're sorry we went a little bit over, but we really, really hope that, inshallah, this talk was informative and helpful for those of us that might be experiencing this. And again, if you want any more information or have any other questions or concerns, please, reach out to us, reach out to Project Taqwa, and who can give you our information, and we can definitely, make use or, speak to you as well. And then finally, also, here are some organizations that do have mental health services within our community. And so if you are struggling and, feel that you want to kind of reach out to somebody or get that extra level of support, please, reach out to somebody who can help.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in tonight. We really appreciate it. We hope it was helpful.